Why do you scream at me? Why do you think that it's free? It's not a choice made by me. Won't you fall? Soon you'll see. When I looked into your eyes, I could see we need to change our lives. Let me in, then we both win. But not knowing that you're killing me. This silence is building, tearing me fearfully. This silence is building, tearing me. I'm screaming.
Greetings and salutations. Ben here. Welcome to the Sunday Night hanging right here on Sundays. Yep, guess that's how that works. Tonight, I have returning my personal amplifier guru. It's a hobby of his, passion of mine, picking his brain, that is. My good buddy Jim, aka Jppagetoo from the chats, who's been a longtime supporter of this channel and answered all the questions for me over the years. So, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Ready to talk about amps.
Yes, we'll let a few more people join in, and then I'm going to do a roll call. And I'm just going to say it right now. I got to solo myself out because this grill cloth. Come on. You just modern amplifier builders, take note. That's all I'm saying. Because honestly, with that amp, we were talking about it off air, and Jim, that is the best part of the amp is the grill cloth. I'm just saying.
Looks like an old hook.
That and the tubes. Yeah. Make a great lampshade too. Yeah. Okay.
You know, maybe if
what do we have in here?
Something you could do, leopard skin or something. That'd be cool.
That would be cool. We've got in the chat here, Charles75N, DJ Play Nice, welcome. Bo, Guitar Man 45, Paul McNary and the Cats, Graphite and Cigars, Ferd Burful, Ryan Hall in the house. Let's see, Keith H is here. Yes, Dr. Fabric Top, BC Rich 581, Hippie J, Dennis Ellis, Poo Ninja, Legend, LRM Guitars, Jason Lindholm. Great to see you guys. Dennis Ellis, Hip Metalworks, Ryan, OU812. Let's see here, who else do we have? Mark's Gas Station, Michael Krause, good to see you, my friend. Symmetry, always a pleasure. Billy Baloney, aka William Bologna. Yep. Mark Taft, great to see you. Josh Tamberg. There's Gary, 1952. Sure. Just hype. You know, we're just going to do a hybrid of the screen name and actual name. Herb of Fireside Studio. He's got that Snake Sabo Kramer. I'm just saying. I like it. That's what I'm saying.
I'd play it.
Oh, yeah. Nice. And we get down back near the bottom. Richard Nagamitsu's here. Jack Collins, good to see you. Peanut, what's up? Kurt 5150, happy Sunday to you. Charles asked if he can borrow that grill cloth. Right. Hey, it looks like we got a new channel member, Sassy Cat.
All right.
Awesome. John DeShane.
Paul McNary's or...
Nice. Paul McNary and all the Cats. They're all tuned in. So, Sky Props here. Nice. So if either or any of you, or all of you, or hopefully all of you, as opposed to none of you, have an amp-related question or any related question, just tag one of us, in the chat, or start with question marks to stand out. Super chats work. And we're going to talk about this. No matching tubes in it. I finally pulled the last tube. It's a tongue saw made in Russia. Found out. Sure.
That would be a modern rebranded tongue saw.
Mm-hmm. Pity. But we found some vintage tubes in it too, so.
Back when I bought my Fender Concert, it had all tongue saw 5881s in it, original
Okay.
tongue saws dated 1960.
Ooh, nice.
They're still in
Very
it.
nice. What's up, Dan of New Jersey? We got 45 people in here all saying howdy to each other. And please hit that like if you haven't already.
Bugle Boys ECC 83s, which are 12AX7 Bugle Boys 12AX7s. Exceedingly rare.
Yes. I remember them being rare because that was the holy grail, like when I first started playing. Like in the late 80s, that was the tube. And it was, and of course, like a lot of my dad's cronies were like, "Whoa, they're Bugle Boys. It's not worth playing." Like, really? Wow. You know?
Yeah.
And let me guess, everything has to be pre-CBS, right?
They even had, the tremolo circuit, and that is a really complicated tremolo. It's that harmonic tremolo. And it had 3 or 4 tubes as part of that circuit, and they were the Bugle Boys too. Go figure.
Yep. That's awesome.
But
back Marshall Murray, Keith
built great.
Campbell. We got all kinds of folks.
60s,
Travis.
70s, all the tubes were built to last because they needed to.
Yeah. Taylor 315 in the house.
Have you ever heard of Jan tubes? JAN?
Yes.
What it stands for is Joint Army Navy. And those were tubes built for the military. And if you ever run across those, they're really, really high quality tubes.
I remember when I started working for the military, that was my first question when I saw the tool crib was, when's the last time this thing was overhauled? They're like, well, we're really due. I'm like, excellent. Let me go dumpster diving. Unfortunately, there was no tube stuff. Although I did find vintage 70s solid state stuff.
Wow.
But no tube stuff. And I was like, I was hoping.
I got a whole bunch of tubes out of old Voice of Music console. Somebody pulled out the amplifier for me and gave me the amp, and I parted it out. Wonderful tubes.
Mm-hmm.
Some old Coke bottle 6B6s. Beautiful RCA tubes. That's where, if you're looking for stuff, go to yard sales.
Mm-hmm.
Look for people who are dumping their old consoles. A lot of them are gone now because they just plain threw them out. But if you can find one, they're worth hauling away because they're full of old tubes. And most of them are the kind of tubes that are useful in amplifiers.
Yep. All right. We got a bunch of questions. Sweet. Okay. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Starting out with Brother John DeShane out there on the West Coast. What are the tonal differences between EL34s and KT88s?
They're both a tube that's a British spec. There's really, how can I explain this? There isn't a ton of tonal difference between the tubes. KT88s are 6550s. They're a really big tube, So a lot of amps, while you can plug them in there, can't take advantage of them because they need all the extra current and all the other things designed around them. Whereas an EL34 is a lesser tube. It'd be comparable to a 6L6. So that's what the fundamental difference between an EL34 and a KT88 is. But tonally, I'd say the KT88's a little cleaner, maybe, but not always. Okay. I'm not a tube roller. I want quality tubes, but, if you tell me that the RCA long plate sounds better than the General Electric short plate double gray, prove it.
Right. Okay.
I've never found it.
Jason Lindholm says, me and my wife are watching. She says hi. Hi. BC Rich 581 says, or asks, he says, bass amps have used parametric EQs for a long time. Why don't you see them in guitar amps as much? It seems to be a graphic EQs mainly.
Well, Mesa Boogie did it. Mesa Boogies have is parametric. Why don't you? generally because guitar players set everything on 10 and play it there. It just wasn't a feature that anybody ever was willing to pay for. Parametric amps require some knowledge to adjust, because what you're adjusting is where the points are that the controls adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Most guitar players can't figure out treble from bass, and what are they going to do moving their mid control over by 500 hertz? They're not going to do it. Also, that requires a lot more components and it was more expensive. And considering it wasn't a selling point that guitar players wanted, most companies weren't willing to do anything like that. So the only place you'll see stuff like that is boutique amps or really high end stuff. And again,
Right.
there's really not a demand for it.
Ed DePriest in the house. He says, what do y'all think about Western Electric going back building tubes?
I hope they do. I mean, we need tubes built quality.
Yeah, like especially if they aren't just
a piece of crap.
Hey, we're building them, but we're building them as crappy as the rest of the tubes out there, then no. But if they're bringing back and building like the same standard that they used to build them at, yes, please.
Well,
you have to pay for it, but that's okay.
Gone. I mean, all the stuff to make tubes is gone, so they have to redesign it from the ground up.
Yeah.
And then once they do that, then they have to refine it and make sure that it's done right and that they sound good. That's going to take a lot of money. Is there enough money in tubes to make that happen? I don't know. You know, there's some old triodes that were used in early stereo equipment that are still being made in America, but they're really super expensive, like $300 a tube or more. And they require at least 2 for a stereo. So there's enough money in it for those people to build those tubes. Mm-hmm. But, you know, will Western Electric make it? I sure hope so. I'd love to see some good high quality American tubes.
Yeah.
But I'm not willing to pay $200 a piece for them.
And we'll pay more for, you know, a quality built guitar or an amplifier itself. So if we want quality built tubes, we're going to have to pay for it. But then again, so you buy a set, you're done for what? The next decade or more.
You know, I'm really worried about the future of tube amps. I you know, given the direction things have gone, you know, with Head Rush and Helix and quad core and all that kind of stuff, being able to really produce high quality sounds, I don't think people care. I think all they want is something that they can tote around and sounds good. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm certainly not going to carry my concert amp around. Holy cow. I mean, that thing weighs 80 pounds.
Sorry.
So, you know, these new generations, they're happy with a cell phone and something they can type on. If they could find a way to put it in their cell phone, that would be their amplifier.
Yep. Quite possibly. I agree.
So
let's see. Gary asks, how many plants are still making tubes?
I think the JJ factory is still going in Czechoslovakia or wherever it is over there in Eastern Europe. The reflector plant's still going, although the current Russian war situation has that cut off. There's one plant in China that came back online. I'm told, I haven't seen any of the tubes from it, but I'm told they're making tubes again. So not many. It's a problem. It's a really messy thing. If you look at a tube, you ever wonder what that shiny stuff is on the inside of a tube? That's called getter. What that is they put that inside a tube. It's normally just a little bead of metal. And then they use induction heating to vaporize that metal. It's barium. And what that does is it absorbs oxygen very quickly. So it completes the vacuum of the tube. Any air that's not pumped out by the air pumps gets sucked in by the barium when it's flashed. So it's called getter because it gets the oxygen and it increases the vacuum. Well, that stuff is nasty.
Yeah.
So it's a highly pollutive process to make tubes. That's why nobody makes them in America anymore, because just the manufacturing licensing and all the EPA stuff they got to do is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking you pretty much have to build it like if some kind of a clean room facility, but you'd still, yeah.
People are doing it themselves. If you look on YouTube, you can see where people are making tubes. You can make your own tubes. All the technology's available. The barium's a little tricky. You know, you got to know what you're doing there. You have to be able to do that in a vacuum environment or a nitrogen environment to put the barium inside the tube and flash it, but they're doing it. I don't know how consistent the tubes are, but they're making tubes because there's a lot of stuff that just isn't available anymore.
Okay, Lawrence. We need more Lawrences of the world. Less pedals, more tubes.
Again,
Boas, Jim, are you able to design your own version amp?
Yes. I learned how to do all that. Yeah. I've actually designed and built my own amps before. I've got some downstairs. You know,
Christopher Live Sal in the house.
Some complicated technology. It's actually really, really simple. The problem is it uses high voltage and it uses transformers. Very expensive.
So I got a text from Tom watching. Goddamn robots. Have goddamn robots make the tubes.
If you can do it, I have no doubt that modern technology would make things better, but most of the tubes are being made in plants that were created in 1940 in Russia. You know, so they're just polluting the shit out of their country. Right. Same with China. China doesn't care.
Eddie Van Haskell in the house. Good to see it. T. Ricky. Where did I see you?
I really do hope that we get somebody who starts making new tubes in America. It can be done. The question is there enough demand to bring the price per tube down enough that somebody will pay for it?
Let's see here. Travis has a very simple question, but I like it. What's treble? What's bass?
I don't know. I'm a guitar player.
Different frequency ranges, I would say.
Okay.
I guess.
Treble obviously is high frequencies and bass is low frequencies. Where's the dividing point in that? Wherever they put it.
Wherever they decide to put the mid?
Yeah. Wherever they decide that they're going to make the controls. There's formulas to determine capacitance and resistance and everything to where the cutoff is. It's not terribly complicated. You know what? I think I said this last time. The biggest difference between a Fender amp and a Marshall amp and a Vox amp is all in the tone section.
Yep.
I've seen it proved. I worked with Bruce Ignator. I took his advanced class. One thing he did is he had a box with a Vox tone stack, a Marshall tone stack, and a Fender tone stack, and could switch between them.
Mm-hmm.
Same amp one sounded like a Marshall, one sounded like a Vox, and one sounded like a Fender. Same amp. All he changed was the tone section.
Josh Tamberg asks, what kind of tube do I need for my 1950 Mercury radio?
Actually, those tubes are all 6-volt tubes because I believe that was a 6-volt vehicle.
Yep.
It's probably an AM tube, so you'll need radio tubes for all that. You'd have to give me the model because they all were different. I might actually have some of the tubes you need to fix that. If you're still going to run it on 6 volts, it's got to be run on 6 volts. It won't run on 12.
Mark Taft in the house. Cousin Doug in the house. You survived Niagara Falls, Doug. Good to know.
So I've had several people give me old car radios. I've looked at the tubes and I go, nothing here for us. They use things like really old, strange tubes that you wouldn't find in an amplifier, a guitar amplifier.
Let's see here. Martin Lemaire. He had a question about quilter amps. How was
Those
that?
are all solid state. I don't know a whole lot about those. They're cool though.
I think he was mentioning something. Yeah. Does quilter amp have some kind of parametric with the tri-Q knob?
I don't know. I've never used a quilter. They're really expensive, and I've had no desire to go buy one. Sorry, I can't help you with
I
that.
think RJ Ronquillo has some experience with them.
He makes really high end amplifiers. You know, it's kind of like Milkman or whatever that is.
There's Emery from Ten Solo Music.
Proves that you can go make solid state sound good.
Is this my speaker? Good to see ya. Hello again to Cousin Doug. I'm behind in the chat, guys. All right, now I'm caught up in the chat. Perfect. All right. I had a question. So what do you think of the shelving of the Igniter brand, apparently?
Really? I hadn't heard that. I'll have to ask Bruce about it.
Yeah. I heard it was
because he's involved with that. What's the name of the module thing that they're doing now? Was
Synergy.
He's working with Synergy, and Bruce is no spring chicken. I mean, he's older than I am, and I'm turning 60 this year. So it doesn't surprise me. I'll have to ask him if he's slowing down or whatever. But you know, if Synergy's selling well, I can't imagine him not wanting to do something like that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Apparently Doug did 10 hours of live feeds today. So he has no voice left. That's good. That's fine. Let's see here. And I see a couple people are asking, do nanotubes work the same, or is there a difference between, a tonal difference or noticeable difference between normal tubes and the Korg's new tubes, which are kind of like nanotubes, if I'm not mistaken?
Those new tubes are all solid state. And they've got a really low gain. So they're really not useful in a lot of applications. There's a lot of really interesting tubes developed over the years. They developed some that are about, they call them pencil tubes.
Right.
They're about as big, slightly bigger around than a pencil, but they built them to go into early rocketry and munitions. So they're really durable. And then after that, they shrunk them down into the size of a thimble, even smaller than a thimble. And those are what's in the microphones, like the U87s and U67s and that. They haven't made them in a long time, but they're really high quality pieces. And again, they were originally designed to fit in for guidance systems and that kind of proximity fuses and that kind of stuff for the military.
Okay.
And the last kind of tubes they built were called compactrons. Toward the end of the tube television era, they designed the TVs so complicated that they required a lot of tubes, and they couldn't put that many tube heaters in there because it was producing a lot of heat and drawing a lot of current. So what they did is took all kinds of different stuff and smashed them all together in one glass envelope. They're called compactrons. So, and there's all kinds of those.
Okay.
So we're talking several different generations of tubes. I have some of every one of those. They're really cool.
Right on. Charles 75N says, Princeton 650 solid state, white noise once you plug it in guitar cable. Doesn't matter what cable or guitar. Not too bad at low volume, but I want to turn it up. Help me, Jppagetoo. You're my only hope.
Why do I get a R2D2 thing going there? Boy, I'd have to look into the circuitry, but it's all white noise. I'd say you've got an output transistor that's probably shot. And what it does is it's just not amplifying. It's just passing current and giving you white noise.
There we go. Ryan Hall, which he had a question. Is there any TV, radios, or other old tubes worth looking into or worth the trouble, I guess? Tom, blowing up my phone.
Well, if you're interested in fixing one of your old cars with a tube radio, yes, there are companies that still have some of those old tubes. And since most people have long since abandoned tube radios in their cars, nobody wants those tubes anymore. So they're out there and they're fairly inexpensive. But you may have to look around a little bit. The Tube Amp store has some of those. Tube Depot has those. Look in their new old stock section. And like I said, depending on what you need, I might have some of that. But if you change that car to a 12-volt system, you might as well buy a reproduction radio and just put it in there and make it look like it's old. The sound will be better. It'll be more reliable and it'll run on 12 volts.
All right, there's not a lot of info to go on, Josh, based on those photos of the radio, but I might have a tube for Josh because I still have the original radio in Dad's Ford, which is only 4 years difference. Same company. Very well could be same tube.
Could very well be. They didn't change stuff a lot back then.
And you can have it, Josh. Glad to do it. Charles Green in the house.
What the tube number is, I might have some.
Yeah.
I've got a huge stash of old vintage tubes around that I bought.
Ray Vanzini. What's up, my friend? Absolute mayhem in the house.
The show, about 10 years ago, I ended up buying 2 or 3 huge boxes full of tubes. All different kinds. A lot of them were compactrons that weren't really useful. But there was a lot of really good tubes in there too.
Let's see here. Graphite and Cigar says, has Jim given a safety verdict on the new amp? Is she safe, Captain?
I think so. It looks like it has all the necessary stuff. I worry about your filter caps being shot. You said it has only one good setting. That tells me that it's probably getting a lot of 60 hertz leakage into the DC.
See, Ryan. Yeah, it's a little, and it could be like, say, the cheapness of the components could be causing the lack of quality of amp sound, but
does it hum?
No, not really.
Okay, that's good.
Like, not noticeably,
Yeah, it probably needs somebody to go through and replace the electrolytic caps just to make it sound good. He showed me the pictures of the inside of the amp. They built it as cheap as they possibly could. They used every cheap component off the shelf they could get. They spared no expense to build that amp. It's about as cheap as they could make it.
Yep. What's up, Tim Thomas, Sean Zimmerman, and Charles Green? Love seeing you over on Andrew's channel last night. That was cool. Hang, man.
Oh, cool. I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it.
I caught part of it. I had to dip out at one point, but I was really digging it. And, because Charles is awesome. So, just saying. And, it's over on the 5150 channel, whatever. I don't know. Fender Guru. That's why I know him as, Andrew. He's Fender Guru. All right? Yeah, that's why I know him as. Hey, Jim Cox.
That I truly believe the lack of quality tubes is why Fender's starting to make these solid state versions of their classic amps.
Yep.
I don't think it's because they can't reproduce them in a way that people will buy them. I just don't think they can get good tubes anymore.
You know what? And not that I'm into it, because I'm not, but if I was going to buy a new amp, I'm just going to pick on the Tone Master, and I don't even know if it has the feature or not, but it doesn't matter. It's a recent release line of amps. They should all have some kind of direct out, not just a line out, which we've had in the past, but like an IR out, whatever, digital out,
Yeah.
Some kind of...
Like Pete's signature.
Yeah, exactly. They should all have something that... Because so many people are like, how do I get this into this?
Yeah, the recording interfaces, are a thing these days. They're inexpensive, they're quality, and people want to be able to record it. They're too cheap to go out and buy a microphone.
Well, that's the other thing, Michael Chris. Yeah, people don't want to carry an 80-pound amp. And good luck playing in a place where you can even carry in an 80-pound amp without getting dirty looks.
Yeah, nowadays, that's why
right?
all the
Silent
guitars.
stage or basically a practice amp, and we're going to mic it anyways. So, okay, fine. If I can just a lunchbox amp that I know sounds good, okay, you're going to throw a mic on it anyways? Sure.
Well, if they're going to throw a mic on it, you might as well bring a 5-watt amp you can crank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Exactly.
it doesn't do you any good to bring a 100-watt Marshall when you have to put it on a half and they tell you to still turn it down.
Or you have to bring an attenuator or something that, brings it all down.
I mean, through my Ignator, my Randall amp, I use a attenuator on it.
Makes sense.
Kind of silly. You crank it up to 60 watts to turn it back into a 5-watt amp.
Yeah. Again, I'll say I'm digging that Marshall DSL 20, and I just run that on the 10. I think it's 10 and 20 are the 2 wattage modes. I love it on the 10. Sounds great. For bedroom use, and it's got enough that it gives the speakers enough of a little push. Fine, and then flip over to 20 if I got to play with amps or with drums. What's up, Squire Telecaster?
Situation.
What's that?
Have you tried playing that with a band? Yeah.
No.
Have you got together and jammed with somebody with it?
No, but I would like to, and I know Rich has, so it's worked for him.
Okay.
I think he's even gigged with it.
Like we talked about on Saturday at the Water Buffalo meeting, my buddy's got one of those 18-watt tube meisters,
right?
And I like to play clean. I just do. I used the clean channel on that, and I couldn't get up over the drums. It just won't get loud enough. So that's the only thing I worry about with that Marshall. I wonder how loud the clean channel is. Does Richie play clean?
He plays, because he would play clean and use it. Or no, I think he was using it on the dirty channel edge of breakup type situation.
Okay.
Jeff K asks, any experience with a Hot Mod V2 plugin for a Marshall SV20? Anything a fellow should know?
Hot Mod V2. Are those little tube adapter things?
I think so.
Clarify.
I think so.
I have some that do that, but I've never used them myself. I hear they work. My brother gave me some to try, and I've never had a reason to try them because I use an attenuator.
Gray Vanzini says, my older bros band had those 1960s magnetones in the shop as often as not.
Oh yeah, the early magnetones were not well built. They sounded great, but they were not well built.
How does one check a tube? Cushman asks.
Tube checker. They make them. Don't you remember walking? I guess if you're my age, you'll remember walking into the grocery store and seeing the old tube stand standing there where you could plug your tube in and check it, and it would tell you whether it was good or bad. And if it was bad, you went down and opened up a cabinet in the bottom and grabbed a tube and went and bought it.
Yep.
They were everywhere. They've slowly disappeared over the years.
I had a tube tester, and I gave it to my buddy along with a couple shoe boxes of random tubes that weren't guitar-related tubes. But that's
the way to find out if your tube's bad. Swap it.
Yeah. And it was just a little, it was wooden, but it looked like a little knife case type thing. You just open up top, had a bunch of different size sockets on the bottom, a chart on the inside of the lid.
Rolls that tell you find your tube on it. It tells you how to set all the different controls on it. And
yep.
Yeah, I got one. I rarely use it because it's much simpler to just try a different tube and see if it works. So
hello, Elephant Foot Risers. Cool name. I love it. Let's see. Unfucking believable ass. There is a video somewhere with PRS about easily converting an MT15 for a 15 watt to 50 watt. How would this be done? And will Jim do it for mine?
Well, I think I remember hearing the guy talk about it. the number one thing is you'll need an output transformer. So you have to replace the output transformer, unfortunately, because it's not built to handle 50 watts of power. It'll burn it up. So that's going to be expensive to do that. Would I do it? If I could find the right information, I'll be happy to look into what it'll take.
Cool.
I'm sure that Paul Reed Smith's company won't tell me, but I'm sure if I asked around to some of my connections, they could tell me what it would take.
Exactly. What's up, James Hawking and Jerry F? Great Van Zine says often pharmacies too. I always thought it weird, but they'd have a tester.
Yeah. Or you walked into Radio Shack, there was always one there.
Well, my dad said when he first started playing, that's where he bought his guitar strings, was at the drugstore. So, because I think a drugstore was always, because it's kind of that carryover from a general store. There was always a everything aisle in a drugstore, at least the mom and pops. It's always an everything aisle.
Yeah, well, a lot of people those were always like 12 to 57 sets, 12 to 60 sets. They were huge strings. They'd do that, and then they'd grab a banjo set and take the high string off the banjo and move everything down one, and then they'd have a set to play.
Yep.
And then they'd also have the solid G string instead of a mount.
That was the other one I hear. Did you know I'd have to go buy a banjo G string to replace the G string on my guitar? Because even when you could buy like lighter guitar strings, it still came with a wound G.
Yeah. Michael, it might have a big transformer in it. I just don't know if it can handle 50 watts. We'd have to check it out. I don't know how he designed it. I don't own an MT-15. I could look at it and see what it is, ask a couple people some more information about it. It's not something that I ever had a desire to do, so I never really looked into what it would take. I'd booger a modern amp. I won't booger an old amp.
Right.
I have a aversion to taking vintage amps and doing things to them that
well, that was like
some way.
One of the first questions in Pete Thorne's chat today. A guy had asked, like, would you route early 70s Strat for a humbucker? I'm like, why would you route a 50-year-old guitar?
No, go buy yourself a modern Mexico Strat or buy a HSS Mexican Strat.
It's not fruitcake.
Why booger it's a perfectly good vintage instrument, although 70s Strats deserve it.
Elephant foot risers, yes. And strain of the day is Sweet Diesel, for those asking.
Yummy.
I don't think I'll die from it, Jax. I don't think that. It's not really an option.
Yeah, I've always wanted to try one of those MT-15s. I've never even had a chance to play one.
Richard Nagamitsu asks, is there any amp brands you won't work on?
Mesa Boogie.
Exactly. That seems to be the number one answer from any amp tech.
There's two reasons for it. One, they're extremely a pain in the ass to get schematics for. They don't want to give them out. And two, they pack everything in so tightly you can't get to it without. If something goes bad, it's nearly impossible to get to and replace. Even Mesa Boogie people don't like to repair Mesa Boogies. Some of the earlier Mesa Boogies, the Model 3 and earlier, the Model 2s, those are a little better. But once they started doing these transatlantics and the 5s and all those, they just started packing stuff in there like you wouldn't believe to keep them small.
Okay, here we go. All right, we got a few things I'm going to cover. Let's see here. Where did I see it? Would you put a Bigsby on a Strat? Yes. Why not? JRAF. And we got RJ and the bad one here. And let's see here. Where was it? There it is. Jim Cox says, I just saw a B52 AT100 for $250 at a pawn shop. Don't know if they're any good, but I just spent a lot on some other amp repairs.
B52s were a value brand to begin with.
Yep.
Is that just the head?
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be the head version of my combo.
Yeah.
I believe. Although it's probably a 100-watt head. Mine's a 60-watt combo, but
that's not a bad price.
Yeah, it's like the poor man's boogie in many ways.
Yeah, not a bad price.
No,
just like anything, the whole reason I learned to work on amps and do all this is, one, I was interested, but two, when I started getting the tube amps, I realized it was going to be ridiculously expensive to repair them if I didn't learn to do it.
Ooh, Hippie J asks, any recommendations for schematics for a Music Man 210 RD?
Yes. Now's not a great time to dig that up. After we're done here, I will look up the website that has a lot of schematics on it, and I'll put it in the comment section.
Perfect.
So that there's a couple good websites out there that specialize in old amp schematics.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, no pines.
That's some rare stuff. Zach Thong in the house. Let's see. Squire Telecaster. Any thoughts on bias for an SF Vibro Champ?
A 5150 2x12 combo for $600. Who's your roadie? Those things are the heaviest bloody amps I've
my back just throbbed thinking about moving that. That's got to be 95 pounds. If it's
easily 95 to 100 pounds. They are not mobile amps. They sound great, but damn, are they heavy. Imagine two full 12-inch speakers with big magnets and then huge transformers in the amp, and it's just really monstrously heavy. Great idea, bad execution. It should have been a 1x12 amp.
Jim's thoughts on the PV Windsor.
Killer. PV made great equipment back in the day. I mean, their whole concept was to, quality equipment for the working musician, and they did that. And it was all made in America, so they built stuff of quality.
Okay, Michael Krause says, but it's only $600. All right, so Michael Krause, here's the thing. If you're going to buy a 212 combo 5150, think of it as you're buying a console stereo for your home. Once it's there, it's there. You're not moving it around. You're putting it
seriously
there. It's a piece of furniture. You're putting a piece of furniture in.
It's one of the few amps that I would answer that question unequivocally. No. Sorry. I suggest you go see it and then try to move it, because you'll understand what we're talking about. It's not just heavy, it's ridiculously heavy. Yeah, I'd like to have one of those JSX PV amps too. But that's the Joe Satriani amp. Those were amazing. He did those for quite a while before he went to Marshall.
BC Rich Piper still weighs less than SVT head.
I wouldn't count on that.
Hey, Mark Taft is back. He says, I now have a secure and reliable Wi-Fi source. By the way, Jim, I'm Ben's roadie. Yeah, Jim was hanging out on the Zoom with us yesterday, Mark.
Yeah.
Then again, Mark was on mobile, so he wouldn't have had the gallery view that those of us on like a laptop have.
Mark, I hate to say it, if you've never picked up a 5150 2x12 combo amp, you have no idea. It is the most miserable combo I've ever seen in my life.
It's awkward.
It's big and it's really heavy. It has to weigh 100 pounds. Imagine lugging 2 bags of cement.
Right.
That's what it is.
Elephant Foot Riser says, okay, I admit it. I gig with the Tone Master. That's fine. It's easy on the back. And they don't sound that bad. You know, they get you, dare I say the usual. They get you 90% of the way there. Like, with ease. What's up, Dave Chase? And we got the one and only Boner Jams in the house.
My first amp was a Heath kit that I built myself. My aunt told me she'd buy an amp for me if I ever learned to play guitar, and I stuck with it and learned to play guitar, and she bought me a Heath kit. I put it together, and it worked. It's loud.
David Roach in the house.
Really loud.
Good to see you, David. Any news on that Jakey Lee small box that Dave Friedman inadvertently showed on the show? No update yet. Hopefully soon. And Michael Crow says, well, I'm also the stupid enough to have a 2x15 crate bass cab. All right, well,
okay.
It's your back. Mr. Anderson, 59, agrees. He knows.
Tone-wise, like I said, there's nothing wrong with them tone-wise. It's just, it's not a gigging amp unless you have a roadie.
Oh, that's true, too. Bo mentions, try picking up a Music Man HD 130 212.
Oh, yeah. Those are heavy, too.
Yep. What's heavier, a 70-watt super reverb or that 5150?
Oh, 5150, clearly. Not even close. You know, a lot of those early Fender amps, they built all the cabinets out of pine. Mm-hmm. So the cabinets were actually pretty light. And, they only put in 1x12s in them, although the super reverb has 2 12s in it.
Here we go. Billy reports in the 5150 212 combo is 85.5 pounds.
Yeah. You fill her up with electrons and it's 100.
Yep. Richard Negamitsu says, I got to get rid of my Mesa TA 30 212. It's close to 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm telling you, when you're toting it, that 15 pounds doesn't make it much difference. It's heavy.
Yeah, Mark, you did do the orange. Yeah, that was an orange 412 cab. That's awkward getting through doorways. Well, it's more compact than the Marshall. I will say that. But they are heavy. You think at first, you're like, oh, sweet, they're smaller. It'll be lighter. No, I don't know what's in those. I think they're made out of lead. I'm not sure, but it certainly feels like it.
I don't doubt it, Eric, that you can make your phone an amp. It's just not loud enough to gig. That's what I was referring to, as far as kids.
I plugged my phone into a full range cab.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you still need an amp, although the phone can be a preamp. And I bet it sounds pretty good, to be honest. You look at the processing power inside an iPhone, and it's pretty impressive. They could probably do quite a lot with it.
Probably. Well, there was that one company did the whole effect system based off the iPad to go into it, not thinking that an iPad's going to change size over the years.
Yeah. I agree with you. My knees hurt. That's why Solid State got its start. People wanted lighter amps. People were actually throwing out tube amps in the early 70s because they thought Solid State was the answer.
Yep.
They didn't want to tote them. Those people who had some wisdom grabbed those amps and hung on to them. Now they're worth real money.
Hey, I gigged with a Solid State amp for years for the simple reason that, yes, it was lighter. And 2, it didn't matter. I was playing drop C with all the gain. It didn't matter what I was playing through. It just had to chug, basically. And it chugged.
I hate to say it, but if you're sitting in the audience, you're at a bar, you're drinking a couple beers and trying to talk over the band anyway, they ain't noticing your guitar tone. Just ain't happening.
BC Rich says 410 cabs are great for bass. Wonder why they're not more popular with guitar players. Richie loves them. He swears by them.
My concert's a 4x10. Sounds fantastic.
Yep.
Fender did quite a few 4x10s. The Concert was a 4x10. The Super Reverb was a 4x10.
I think his DeVille was a 410.
Yeah,
That's why he split it. Yeah, because then he split into a head because it was too damn heavy. So he split into a head and a cab, and then he did the matching at one time. It was the Marshall head. Actually, it might not have been that DSL-20 I got off him. It might have been the head he had before that with a Marshall 410 cab.
Yeah, 4x10.
Because he came across one of them on the Kijiji and just loved it.
The reason 4x10 combos weren't popular is because they were heavy. You know, they're lighter than a 4x12, but 4x10 was still a little heavier than they wanted. So they liked 1x12s. Even a 1x15 was better.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Jerry F asked, Jim, what kind of pickups do you like?
I'm a single coil guy. I like Strat pickups. I like Tele single coil pickups. I like P90s. But I have all the humbuckers too, including humbuckers that fit in a single coil slot. But yeah, I'm a single coil guy. Maybe it's because I've lost all the top end of my hearing. I don't know.
Hip Metal Works says Super Twin 410 was 95 pounds. Just Googled.
Yeah, the Super Twins were a whole different animal than a twin. Super Twins were from the 70s. Those are the ones that Ted Nugent was always pictured standing on top of. He played
Right.
Super Twins. They were 120 watt amps. Yeah, Super Twin and a twin are vastly different animals.
What's up, Nelson Rodriguez? Good to see you. Sascat says I can play guitar and bass through my Super. Yep. I don't differentiate. I'll play bass through a guitar amp. I actually prefer it many times because I like that slightly distorted mid-range bass tone, punk rocky. So I like playing through my 412. Honest. Solid state, 412, boom, done.
Most people don't realize that the actual primary sound of the low end of a bass is actually, most people can't hear it. You're hearing the harmonics. So, you know, if you're playing a low E on a bass, you're not hearing most of the actual fundamental of that low E. It's down near the bottom of most people's hearing ability. So you're actually hearing the harmonics. That's why most bass players don't play down there. They'll play in the mid-range, higher up on the neck.
Right.
Just true.
Oh, and by the way, I want to tell everyone, check out Boner Jams and Kurt 5150 as well as Jay and Caleb over on Under the Bus Network on Wednesday nights. They're fun. They make you giggle. And lately, they've been giving away gift cards just to get people to tune in. Check it out. I could be wrong, but I'm not.
Say that again, Ben. Where the channel's at?
Under the Bus Network with Kurt 5150 and Boner Jams and Caleb from Nerd Halen and Jay 7 or 8.
Oh, okay.
Jeez Louise. Billy Baloney says Lemmy style, straight into a full Marshall stack. Exactly. That's fine.
He played the Marshall bass amp though. He did. Or a PA head. He had a couple PA heads too.
Yep. Because, you know, he needs 200 watts. No, you don't. No, you don't.
So those are Marshall majors that are the 200 watts. And those have, what goes back to our conversation earlier, the Marshall majors were built around 5881 tubes, which are KT88s.
Okay. Friend Tim Pierce has one of them on the back. I always see that. I'm like, oh, there it is.
Marshall major. That's what.
What's up, Dave Chase?
That's what.
Good to see you yesterday at Water Buffalo meeting.
Yes, Murder One was his amp. Although he had a couple different stage sets. He didn't always play just that amp. He had 2 or 3 different rotating stage sets. He played loud. I mean, I saw him at Pine Knob in like 2008, and he played loud outside.
That's how you know it's loud when it's loud outside.
Yeah.
Jeff Case says Blackmore played the majors.
Yes, he did. Yep. So did David Bowie's guitar player. What's his name?
Mick Ronson?
Mick Ronson.
Yes.
But the problem with Marshall majors is Marshall didn't do a very good job of speccing all the internal components, and it drew so much current that they caught on fire quite often.
Wow. So Billy Baloney set up Lemmy's rig once. Awesome.
Did you really? That's cool.
And then Bo says, shoot, try seeing them in Harpo's. I'm like,
if I saw him in Harpo's, I'd hide right below the stage. If you've ever been to Harpo's, there's a dance floor right in front of the stage, and it drops like 10 feet from the front of the stage down to the dance floor. So if you're standing right at the front, you can't see the band. But then again, they can't blow you out of the water either.
This is true. Yes, Tom wants to, speaking of loud players, Jay Mascis. Yes, Jay is loud.
I've never seen Jay Mascis.
Yeah, what? Because he uses...
Junior?
Yeah, generally rule of thumb is 2 Marshall stacks and a high watt stack. I believe that's his...
Wow, that's brutal.
Yeah, and set up in a semicircle, and it's just him and loud. Yeah.
I hope he uses hearing protection.
So do I.
That's the one thing that I went to a lot of concerts. The one thing I always did was protected my hearing. I've taken hearing tests. My ears are about 10 years younger than my actual physical age. I can hear pretty well.
Nice. Michael Krostas, where's Harpo's? Detroit.
Harpo's. It is in the ghetto in Detroit. It was in the ghetto even back in the day.
And it hasn't been any better. Jerry has to see David Black at Harpo's. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Guitar Man 45 has a story involving both David Black and Harpo's, but that's a Water Buffalo story. That's not a public story. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we'll catch that one at the middle of the month.
Yeah. That's always a good one. So yeah, I like David Black too.
And so I didn't get to Harpo's very often. I didn't get back in the day. I saw most of the shows in other areas of Michigan. Although I've been to Harpo's.
Quentin James coming in like a champ. Just check this out. The place that is haunted, I believe, is in Iowa. BC Rich. If Aaron was here, he could confirm that as well, because I think Aaron's also played there. I could be wrong.
Yes, Travis. Weeds in the street right next to the hookers.
So Tom reports in they measured 127 decibels from 15 feet away from J Mascis full stacks, each with a 200 watt head, small club in Lancaster, PA.
See, I just saw the Winery Dogs, and it was in it was at the Token Lounge, which is just a bar, and they played so loud. I had hearing protection, and I still had to go to the back. I don't see a need to play that loud.
Jerry F says, I got robbed at Harpo's parking lot at gunpoint back in the day for my leather jacket.
I don't doubt that a bit. I do not doubt that a bit. You're lucky you only got robbed. Exactly. It's that kind of neighborhood, man. You take nothing down there that's irreplaceable.
Yeah, everything's got to be disposable on those trips.
Yep.
Well, we're going to go a few more minutes here, folks. Tom said he had earplugs with gunner cans over top of those. I bet you did.
Where did you see Jay Mascis?
He said it was in a small club in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And I think that was when BC Rich said, yeah, the Amish never knew what hit them, right?
I think the loudest band I ever saw was the Black Crowes early in their career. They used to play at the verge of pain.
I think the loudest concert I'd seen would be Alice in Chains, because they brought a much larger PA system than the room warranted. And that permanently messed up my hearing. It's not been the same since that show. But single loudest performance was Ingwe at Sweetwater, where they hooked up all the amps, and I think I counted 53 heads on stage, all plugged in.
Ingve, those aren't props.
No, and that was we're going for a sound record. I'm like, please, not with that shrill tone.
Oh,
Nobody needs to hear. Okay, first of all, only a handful of artists can play the bridge pickup of a Stratocaster into a Plexi and it not be painful to hear at volume.
Plus, he plays.
Ingwe is not one of those people.
He uses a Dodd 250 overdrive in between that too.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
As hell too.
Yeah, shrill. That's his tone. Shrill.
Yeah. I've seen him a couple times. He didn't play that loud.
Do you have a wah on stage? If the answer is yes, please check to make sure it's not on and cocked halfway, or on all the way forward, because that's basically what I heard. There was no lows, no mids.
So Ingwe played at Sweetwater? I didn't know that. That was cool.
Yeah.
And I saw Billy Sheehan.
The funniest thing, though, Jim, was as soon as he hit the opening chord, watching the wave of people get up from that outdoor auditorium and just leaving. Or at least moving back.
Then? Did they have the outdoor stage set up?
Yeah. With the kind of
the big arch.
Yeah. I'm like, this looks like the kind of things they have around here. We keep rock salt in for the winter. You know?
Yeah. I hope they go back to having live Gear Fest again, because that sure is a good time.
Jerry says, Ben, sounds like you're a Detroit area guy. I am not, but I did live in Windsor for a brief period of time, so I was Detroit adjacent. Big Sugar was effing loud. Billy Baloney, I bet. Big Sugar is always loud. Yes.
The loudest opening act was a band I saw. It was a triple bill: Marseille, Blackfoot, and Nazareth. And Marseille came out and they played at 10 on everything. It was so obscenely loud, and you couldn't understand a thing that they played or said. It was like, why? What are you doing here? But it was loud.
My knees hurt says, I saw a Slayer and they were so loud I couldn't tell what song they were being played, and I know Slayer.
Yeah, that's the same with that Marseille. They were so loud you couldn't understand anything. It was just garble.
That's like Alice in Chains. I remember, because I didn't have hearing protection, once I plugged my ears with my fingers, I could understand the lyrics to the song because the PA was that overpowering. I'm like, wow, okay, this is not good.
I agree, Billy. Nazareth was loud too. I've seen them a couple of times, and they were very loud, but man. Hey, if they have Gear Fest down there, all of us Michigan crowd ought to meet down there for a get-together. You go from Cleveland, we could probably get Bo would be there. Don't they send a limo for him?
Yeah, right. Well, I think it's a helicopter. Sweetwater sends the helicopter. Because it reminds me when I go to the NASCAR races and we see all the A-list drivers getting helicoptered in to the track. Come on, really?
I'm sure that they wouldn't have a Gear Fest without Bo.
No, exactly. He's probably putting on a clinic on how to purchase in quantity. How to get to know your Sweetwater rep.
I've seen Pantera too, and Phil Anselmo was annoying. He sat there and swore at us and spit on the crowd, and I'm going, people pay for this?
See you, Dennis. Have a good one, brother. Yeah, that Lane Staley was kind of the same thing. He was very insulting to the crowd, and
yeah, I just didn't need somebody spitting in the crowd. He'd hack up a loogie and
yeah, I'm good.
Out in the crowd, like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I paid money to be here. I didn't pay for that.
That was the Black Sabbath show. Black Sabbath was the headliner.
Right. I remember trying to get tickets to that for the Toronto show. The Sky Dome sold out in 15 minutes.
Yeah. I went in. I could tell that one at the Water Buffalo meeting, but I ended up getting second row tickets for that, right in front of
Nice.
The bass player. It was great.
Nice.
I'm trying to remember who
The loudest concert you went to was Kick Axe, Crocus, and Accept in Kingston in '85. I bet it was loud.
The first time I saw Ted Nugent, he was pretty loud. That was 1980, I think. It was on his Scream Dream tour. But he wasn't as loud as Nazareth.
I was thinking, loudest show I played, I just thought, bands I've seen loud. Anvil was loud, and I opened for them, and I'm like, they are much louder than we were, and we were pretty loud. Like, they are loud. For a three-piece, they make a lot of racket. I'm just saying.
And remember, back in 1980, that wasn't the PA system that was doing a lot of that. They were still doing the heavy lifting with amplifiers on stage.
Yep.
First time I saw Ted Nugent, he was full Ingwe mode at that time, just a wall of Marshalls behind him, and I know that several of those were hooked up.
Yeah, to be a monitor guy back in the day, they're like, we need more monitor. I can't hear the voice. I'm giving her all she's got, Captain. You know, like, Jesus. You know, like, sorry.
Pro,
how about turning down a fucking amp?
I can't break the laws of physics.
Yeah. How do you know you're too loud as a guitar player for your stage volume? When they start miking the drums. If they need to mic the drums to keep up with you, you're too loud. T. Ricky says, will there be a Water Buffalo meeting coming up? Yes. Won't be this coming Wednesday. It'll be the Wednesday after that.
Yeah, this coming weekend's Easter.
Yeah. So it'll be post-Easter. Speaking of which, this coming 1 week from tonight, we're doing a group hang because it's Easter Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have a guest. You're just going to...
I thought about booking a guest. I'm like, nah. And then the week after that, we have Aaron reporting in from NAMM. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I can believe the Killer Dwarfs were really loud.
They weren't as loud as Anvil. They're pretty loud, but like I don't think they weren't much louder than us. But that was only out of courtesy because you never, that's the courtesy. You don't play louder than the headliner. You don't use as much lights. You don't. Although that's how you know you're doing a good set when the lighting guy starts adding more lights during your set. It's not as static. They start, these guys are pretty good.
I never understood why headliners had to be such pinheads. Oh, you can only have these color sets and only this much light. Hey, look, give them whatever they want. If they're better than us, prove it. If you can't hold your own as a headliner, you shouldn't be headlining.
If you want in next Sunday, Bo, you're more than welcome. There we go. So Bo will be joining me next Sunday.
Oh, helicopter time.
Let's see. And Marsha Murray was asking what level membership for the Buffalo meeting? All members are welcome. All patrons and members.
We have a good time.
Well,
and
just check it's posted on the community tab of my channel.
We generally don't talk about politics or anything controversial. There's no. We might tell stories that you don't want to document and permanently.
No, yeah, it's basically it's a harken back to a group hang before the days of cell phone cameras and. It'll be literally if we're all hanging out, how much we'll talk about gear to a certain extent, but then it's a lot of just. Men talk. For better terms.
We show off our instruments and guitars. Just saying.
Although, if we get on a roll, next thing you know, there's been 40 or 50 guitars shown off in the matter of half an hour. Wow, that just happened.
And I usually tune in, so if you have an amp question, you're more than welcome to ask me there, and I'm happy.
Yeah, I think that he had mentioned he had a resistor question or something.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, you're always welcome to, contact me through Ben. I'll answer what I can.
I can help the fellow out. Paul McNary says, always enjoy your episodes, Jim.
Oh,
Me
thank
too.
you. I try not to overstep what I know. If I don't know something, I'll just say that's just something I'm not familiar with, or I'll have to look that up. You know, I'm no amp expert, but I know enough to help.
Sure. Ferberful says it tends to become a guitar show.
It does. We
And Charles says my index finger does get worn out on those. Yeah, because Charles is doing all the solo layouts. Glad you liked it, Ben. I think Ben's from just down the road from me.
There were some cool
He's
guitars.
a fellow Canuck.
Unfucking Believable was showing off some of his collection.
What's up, Marcy? Yeah, like it's not every day you see a master built Framus.
Yeah. 2 Framuses.
Yeah.
And then, we saw that nice old Kramer.
Mm-hmm. And then Bo shows off basically the carving catalog.
Yeah, really. If you want me to work on your amps, Bo, I think we could work out a deal. I'd take one of those carvings.
Dan says, I have a question. What does Jim think of using a Variac?
Great idea. They're just not cheap. You have to get one that you can draw enough current through, and the more current you draw, the more expensive the Variac becomes. If you're going to run it on something like a 100-watt Marshall, you're probably talking a $300 or $400 Variac. But it's cool. Also, when you start to lower your voltage down below 105 range, your tube biases start to get funny. So, if you're going to try to pull the Eddie Van Halen trick where you really lower your, you go down to 80 volts, you got to have your tubes biased to be run at those levels. Otherwise, it's just going to sound really mushy.
Right. What's up, Rock Daddy? Marcy says, did you guys talk about amp sims already? Nope. Don't really know anything about them. Other than I said all modern amps should have a direct out into some form of interface.
And I said, I truly believe that amp sims and modern technology is going to obsolete tube amps. I really believe that. It might not happen in my lifetime yet, but within the next 25, 30 years, tube amps will be obsolete. They're just going to be really hard to get tubes for.
Yeah.
I just see that changing. The factories are just going to slowly stop producing tubes.
Oh. And we got one more question, which is a nice quick one because we do need to get going. Michael Kroos, you don't have to give exact, but where's Jim based? Who's lucky enough to have him work on their amps?
I live in Michigan.
If the check's big enough, let me speak for Jim real quick. If the check's big enough, he'll come to you.
It has occurred to me, and I'm planning on retiring in a couple of years, that I could make extra money working on amps, and may do so. I just don't. If I'm going to retire, I don't want too many commitments where I got like amps stacked up the hallway, and have to spend all my days working again.
But if you tool on 1 or 2 a week or whatever, or something like that.
So I live in Western Michigan, over toward the lakeshore. But I get down to the Detroit area. So if you wanted me to look at an amp, I might want to take it back home with me where I can bring it back to all my diagnostic equipment. But I'd be willing to look at amps.
Marcia Murray says, I'd love to live by the Great Lakes until it snows.
Yeah, I'm in the snow zone.
Until it snows. So on that note, I appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. We got new members in here and returning members, and thanks to the Mod Squad for doing the Mod Squad stuff, and thanks each and every one of you that tuned in. And of course, if you're new, please subscribe, hit that thumbs up. It helps me out. And yeah, I'll be back tomorrow night with Canucks with Guitars with myself and Trev and Terry. Live Q&A. Mention that. Yep. Same thing, different people.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, always fun, Jim. And
Thanks.
everyone have a great night. And as always, hold those doors open. Jim, hang on the line. And yeah, hold those doors open. Let Jerry F in ahead of you in traffic. Why not? He's got to get somewhere. Clearly, he's driving. He needs to get somewhere. Happy tone chasing. Be good to each other. And of course, don't litter. Just don't.